Ellen DeGeneres had interviewed guests from around the world throughout her decades-long career, from international celebrities sharing their global perspectives to immigrants telling their American dream stories, but nothing could have prepared her for the afternoon when what seemed like a routine conversation about cultural adaptation and the immigrant experience would evolve into one of the most profound explorations of human connection she had ever encountered. What started as a discussion about overcoming language barriers became a transformative journey into the universal language of empathy, understanding, and shared humanity that transcends words, nationality, and cultural differences. It was a warm Tuesday afternoon at the Ellen Studios, and the atmosphere was welcoming and curious as they prepared for what was scheduled to be an inspiring episode about cultural diversity, immigration stories, and the beautiful complexity of building bridges between different communities. Ellen, wearing a vibrant teal blazer over white pants, was looking forward to interviewing Amara Hassan, a 31-year-old refugee from Somalia who had arrived in the United States just 18 months earlier, and whose remarkable journey of adaptation, community building, and resilience had been featured in several local news stories and refugee advocacy publications. Amara's story was exactly the kind of inspiring narrative that Ellen loved to feature. Someone who had faced unimaginable challenges, had shown extraordinary courage in seeking a better life, and was now working to help other refugees navigate the complex process of building new lives in an unfamiliar country. According to her preliminary materials, Amara had fled conflict in her homeland, had spent 3 years in a refugee camp, and since arriving in the United States had learned basic English, found employment, and begun volunteer work with refugee resettlement organizations. Our next guest represents the courage and resilience of people who leave everything behind to build new lives in a new country, Ellen announced to the attentive studio audience. She arrived in America just 18 months ago, speaking very little English, but she's already making a difference in her new community. Her story reminds us that home isn't just a place, it's something we create wherever we find safety, opportunity, and hope. Please welcome refugee advocate Amara Hassan. The audience offered warm, respectful applause as Amara walked onto the stage with graceful, measured steps. She was a tall, elegant woman wearing a beautiful royal blue dress and a colorful headscarf that suggested both cultural pride and personal style. What struck Ellen most was the combination of nervousness and dignity in Amara's bearing, someone who was clearly stepping outside her comfort zone, but doing so with remarkable courage and poise. "Amara, welcome to the show," Ellen said warmly as they embraced gently. Amara smiled broadly and responded with what appeared to be a traditional greeting in her native language, accompanied by a graceful gesture that Ellen didn't understand but that felt clearly welcoming and appreciative. Ellen realized immediately that there might be more of a language barrier than the production team had anticipated. "Amara, how much English are you comfortable speaking today?" Amara looked thoughtful for a moment, then held up her hand with her thumb and forefinger slightly apart, indicating a little bit. She spoke carefully. "Little English. Sorry. Very, very happy here." Ellen felt a wave of warmth at Amara's effort and sincerity. "Don't apologize at all. We'll figure this out together. Can you tell us about Somalia, your home country?" Amara's face lit up with obvious love and longing as she began speaking rapidly in what Ellen assumed was Somali. Though Ellen couldn't understand the words, Amara's tone, gestures, and facial expressions conveyed deep affection mixed with sadness. She gestured broadly as if describing vast landscapes, then brought her hands to her heart, then made motions that seemed to suggest family and community. Ellen found herself surprisingly moved by Amara's passionate description, despite not understanding a single word. "Amara, I can't understand your language, but I can see in your face how much you love your homeland." Amara nodded enthusiastically and pointed to her heart, then made a gesture that seemed to encompass the studio and beyond. She spoke in English, "Somalia, here," pointing to her heart, then America, here, gesturing around them, then both home. Ellen felt touched by Amara's simple but profound explanation. "You carry both places with you. That's beautiful." Amara seemed to understand Ellen's sentiment and smiled warmly. She then began speaking in Somali again, but this time her tone grew serious and her gestures became more urgent. She seemed to be describing difficult circumstances, making motions that suggested running, hiding, and protecting children. Ellen watched Amara's face as she spoke and felt her heart breaking for the pain clearly reflected in her expressions. Amara, you're talking about having to leave Somalia, aren't you? About the danger you faced. Amara nodded solemnly and spoke in English. Very danger. Children safe, must go. She made protective gestures around herself and looked directly into Ellen's eyes with an intensity that conveyed the desperation of a mother protecting her family. Ellen felt tears forming as she recognized the universal experience of parental protection in Amara's gestures and tone. You left to protect your children. Yes, Amara said simply, then began speaking in Somali again, her voice becoming emotional. She gestured as if walking a long distance, pointed upward as if toward the sky, and made motions that suggested praying or hoping. Ellen found herself completely absorbed in Amara's storytelling despite the language barrier. Amara, even though I can't understand your words, I can feel your strength and your hope, your gestures, your expressions. They're telling me more than words could. Amara seemed to understand Ellen's recognition and appreciation. She stood up and began demonstrating what appeared to be traditional dance movements, graceful and flowing, her face transforming into joy and celebration. The movement seemed to tell a story of community, harvest, and festivity. Ellen was enchanted by this unexpected cultural sharing. This is beautiful, Amara. Is this a traditional dance from Somalia? Yes, Amara said enthusiastically. Wedding, happy, community. She gestured for Ellen to stand and tried to teach her simple movements, guiding Ellen's hands and showing her the steps with patience and laughter. Ellen attempted to follow Amara's movements, feeling clumsy but delighted by the connection they were creating. I'm not very good at this, but it feels wonderful. Amara laughed warmly and shook her head, speaking in Somali while making encouraging gestures. Her tone clearly conveyed you're doing fine, or keep trying, even though Ellen couldn't understand the words. As they danced together, Ellen felt a profound sense of communication happening without language. Amara, this is amazing. We're having a conversation through movement and expression. Amara nodded enthusiastically and then began humming a traditional melody while continuing the dance movements. Her voice was beautiful, carrying melodies that seemed to tell stories of both joy and sorrow, celebration and longing. Ellen found herself humming along, trying to match Amara's rhythm and tone. Music really is a universal language, isn't it? Universal, Amara repeated, recognizing the word and nodding vigorously. She then pointed to Ellen's heart, then to her own heart, then made a gesture that seemed to encompass the audience and the world beyond. Ellen felt moved by this simple but powerful communication. You're saying that hearts speak the same language everywhere? Amara smiled with obvious delight at Ellen's understanding. She then began speaking in Somali while making gestures toward the audience, her tone warm and inclusive. She seemed to be addressing the viewers directly, sharing something important. Ellen turned to the audience, most of whom were watching with fascination and obvious emotional engagement. I think Amara is speaking to all of you, sharing something from her heart. Amara continued speaking in her native language, then switched to careful English. American people, very good heart. Welcome me, help me. Thank you very much. Ellen felt overwhelmed by Amara's gratitude and grace. Amara, thank you for sharing your culture with us and for reminding us that kindness doesn't need translation. Amara seemed to understand the sentiment behind Ellen's words, even if she didn't catch every phrase. She approached Ellen and took both of her hands, speaking directly to her in Somali with obvious sincerity and emotion. Ellen looked into Amara's eyes and felt the depth of what was being communicated. I may not understand your words, but I understand your heart. You're thanking me but also sharing something deeper. Amara nodded, and then surprised Ellen by speaking more English than she had used before. You make me feel seen, important, human, same human. Ellen felt tears streaming down her face at the profound simplicity and truth of Amara's statement. Yes, Amara, same human. We're all the same human. Amara then did something unexpected. She began teaching Ellen phrases in Somali, speaking slowly and helping Ellen pronounce words of greeting, gratitude, and friendship. Ellen struggled with the unfamiliar sounds but attempted each phrase with obvious respect and effort. I'm terrible at this pronunciation, but I love learning from you, Ellen said, laughing at her clumsy attempts. Amara laughed too and made encouraging gestures, clearly enjoying the role reversal where she was the teacher and Ellen was the student. She spoke in Somali, then translated, learning good, trying beautiful. Ellen addressed the cameras with obvious emotion. Folks, what's happening here is proof that communication goes so much deeper than language. Amara and I are having one of the most meaningful conversations I've ever had, and we're doing it through gestures, music, dance, and heart connection. Amara seemed to understand that Ellen was addressing a broader audience and spoke in Somali while gesturing toward the cameras, her tone earnest and hopeful. Amara, what would you want people watching to understand about refugees, about people who come here from other countries? Amara thought carefully, then spoke in simple English. We same dreams, love family, want safe, want help others. Different language, same heart. Ellen felt the profound truth of Amara's words. You're reminding us that beneath all our differences, we want the same fundamental things: safety, love, purpose, connection. Yes, Amara said emphatically. Connection. She made a gesture that linked her heart to Ellen's heart, then extended it to encompass the entire studio. Ellen made a decision that felt both spontaneous and deeply meaningful. Amara, would you teach our audience how to say welcome in Somali? I think we'd all like to learn how to welcome people in your language. Amara's face lit up with joy and surprise. She spoke the Somali word for welcome slowly and clearly, then helped Ellen and the audience practice the pronunciation. The sound of hundreds of people attempting to say welcome in Somali created a powerful moment of cultural bridge building. That was beautiful, Ellen said. Amara, how does it feel to hear all these people trying to speak your language? Amara wiped tears from her eyes and spoke in English. Feel home, feel family. 3 months later, Ellen received a letter from Amara written in careful English, sharing that the episode had connected her with dozens of volunteers who wanted to help other refugees learn English and navigate American systems. Amara had also been invited to share her cultural traditions at schools and community centers throughout the city. 6 months later, Ellen invited Amara back to the show, along with an interpreter, for a follow-up conversation about her continued adaptation and the connections she had built since their first interview. Amara's English had improved dramatically, but she still preferred to communicate through the rich combination of words, gestures, and heartfelt expression that had made their first encounter so powerful. What that day taught me, Ellen reflected months later, is that real communication happens at the level of human recognition and respect. Amara and I connected because we saw each other as complete human beings, not just as interviewer and subject or celebrity and refugee. The episode became a landmark moment for discussions about immigration, cultural exchange, and the importance of creating welcoming communities for people from different backgrounds. Sometimes, Ellen would say in subsequent interviews, the most important conversations happen when we stop trying to be understood and start trying to understand. Amara taught me that empathy is the only language that really matters. Because sometimes the most profound connections happen when we abandon our reliance on words and trust in our shared humanity to bridge whatever differences seem to separate us. And sometimes the most beautiful conversations are the ones where hearts speak directly to hearts, requiring no translation because love, hope, and human dignity are truly universal.